Hello yet again for another video of me ranting on about old games and consoles and other such delights. I've had some caffeine, so I'm a wee bit more awake than I was when I did the Intellivision video, of which I was half falling asleep if I'm totally honest. So this video should fare a little bit better and I should sound a bit less like a grumpy old git. Anyway, yeah, I said I was going to buy something else on eBay and, open it up and check if it's working, blah-de-blah-de-blah. The usual sort of untested eBay junk sort of nonsense. Although this listing wasn't listed as untested, it was listed as used, but I think we might run into some issues because it's in a bit of a sorry mess. And the fact that the packaging looks like it was attempted by a cat, and as you know, cats don't have bloody thumbs. In fact, I'm sure a cat could have packaged this parcel a bit better than the seller has. Yeah, look at the state. It looks like Hagrid sat on it. It looks like Hagrid's cake for the bloody first Harry Potter film. I know people don't have a lot of money, right? But don't send your bloody parcels like this, man. It's just a mess. Anyway, lift this parcel down and we'll open it up and see what's inside. Oh, I've already opened it up because I wanted to check that the console wasn't basically turned into sand for it being crushed through the Royal Mail. I actually don't know if it was crushed through the Royal Mail or if the seller's just got an absolute problem with eBay sellers and wants to piss them off by packaging these packages poorly. But anyway, rant over. Yeah, I already opened it up and there was two things in this package. I'm only going to be looking at one of them today, but we'll have a quick look at one of the things that was in it just so you know what was in that package, and it was part of the overall price of this eBay purchase. One of the things was this, and it's one of those plug and play Atari controller console on a chip things. Apologies for the unnecessary jump cut. I'm going to present to you the Lidl equivalent of crack cocaine. These bloody things. Honestly, I keep having to sort of stop talking and have a bite of one of these. They're like I can't really describe them. They're like wafer sort of rolls with vanilla cream inside them, and I swear to God, they are just amazing. I can't stop eating them. I think I bought about 3 packets of them because they sell out really easily. I even drove to a different town to actually get a packet of them. So yeah, they keep distracting me from doing my actual recording. Anyway, what I was saying was this is an Atari sort of plug and play console. And it's one of those system on a chip things by Jack Pacific, which is they make these sort of plug and play consoles, and it's designed to look like the original Atari controller, but we're going to look at that another day, so don't get too focused on this because there's something else in the package I want to show you. Okay, so the main attraction of today's video is this very dirty NES clone. NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, I don't care how you say it. I know some Americans get a bit bothered about you saying NES and SNES as abbreviations for Nintendo consoles, but you know what? That's just your opinion, man. I really don't care. Just say whatever you want. We used to call every single console we had in our house a computer. It didn't matter what it was. It could be the Mega Drive, it could have been the PlayStation 1. We'd call it a computer. In fact, one of my friends' dads took that sort of nickname for the hardware so seriously that he used to shout at his son if he didn't quit out of a game before turning off his PlayStation because he thought it was the same rules as a PC. Because you used to get the don't turn your computer off and then it would come up on the monitor, it's safe to turn off your computer now with Windows 98, I think it was. Anyway, I'm rambling. This is a clone system of an NES, a Nintendo Entertainment System. So, yeah. 2 seconds and I'll fetch an actual NES and you can see what the comparison's like. Right, I'll come clean. I didn't need to jump cut there. The Nintendo was sitting right behind me. I just really wanted to devour another one of those wafer stick things because they're literally all I care about anymore. I will literally stop talking to my friends and family and quit my job and live out in the streets if it means I can have infinite amounts of those bloody sticks. I'm honestly obsessed. I'm even looking at them right now thinking I want to eat all of you and obtain diabetes. But anyway, no, we're going to do the video and we're not going to eat tasty Polish snacks. As you can see, I've fetched the Nintendo and I've got the clone console sitting on top of it. The clone console, as you can see, is significantly smaller than the Nintendo Entertainment System. But you might have noticed that it has the original sort of ports for the Nintendo control pads on the front, and it has a very similar layout to the fact that the cartridge goes on the top bit from the front, and it has these sort of power and reset buttons here. it sort of almost looks the same as a Nintendo, but isn't quite the same, if that makes sense. Anyway, you get two types of clone systems. The first one that I see more often than not is the system on a chip style system. So how that works is basically putting it as simple as possible. There's a chip inside on a board, one singular chip, and it acts exactly like a Nintendo Entertainment System or any console it's trying to emulate. It is basically emulation, and it'll sort of do the task of every sort of chip and processor on the original board. But you don't have a huge board, you just have a tiny little sort of PCB with the controller ports soldered onto it and a sort of one microchip doing the whole job of the whole original system. Anyway, the other type of console that you get, of which could be considered a clone or a sort of replica console of an original, is one of which actually emulates the hardware in terms of every single thing on the board. So what you'll typically have is you'll have a whole board inside, and it'll have a number of chips of which are used in the exact same way of which the original system will use its chips, so it's video RAM and things like that. And believe it or not, this little clone console here is actually one of those. It's not one of the system on a chip types, which is bloody fantastic because I think it's going to be really interesting to look at. So let me just stick the Nintendo back, and I'll have another couple of those sticks and make myself feel a bit more sick, and then we can start looking at the console and what's on it. So I've done a little bit of research into this console, and I believe that the company that created it is known as NASA. And I don't mean the rocket scientists that like to go on little day trips to the moon and things like that. I mean, it's just some company that go under the name of NASA, of which make sort of video game consoles like this. And yeah, they're all of the sort of clone type, piratey sort of sail the seven seas and break all the copyright laws you can kind of malarkey. So that's what this is. It's a clone Nintendo, and it's very evident it's a clone Nintendo because it looks like an original NES system. It's got the cartridge slot on the front, it's got the two joypad bits, it's got the buttons, although they're not the right way around, but whatever. It's even got the weird sort of detailing with the black and the grille. Anyway, I don't know if you can see how dirty this one is, but it's absolutely filthy. Look at that stain. How did that stain get on there? Look at it. It's a big dirty brown stain. Right, so let's see what's different between this cheeky little blighter of a console and the original Nintendo Entertainment System. So, apart from the size, right away what you can see is that it has this sort of front loading slot, and it's not the same kind of flap that you lift up and then you insert the game and press it down, which I believe is called a zero insertion mechanism something or another. Is the technical name for that. What it is a bloody nuisance because the more you put games in and out of that thing and press them up and down, it actually wears the pins, and the more you wear the pins, the less chance you've got of successfully loading your game into the system. And especially with the lockout chip, because then the lockout chip thinks because it can't read the game, it must be a pirated game. And then you basically spend about 5 million years just waiting on a blinking light to turn off and waiting for your title screen to actually come up on your game. And nobody wants to deal with that noise. Anyway, yeah, so that's the first thing that's different. The games just go straight into it and boom, the game is plugged into the system and it's ready to go. It's got the same controller ports on the front. I did notice they say turbo pad, but that's probably just because the pads they came with were probably, it's quite a common thing for cheaper systems to do. They'll basically stick extra buttons on the pad and call them turbo buttons, and really all it is just a button that presses the other two buttons repeatedly. Anyway, the power button and the reset button are in a different orientation, although they are still quite nice. Like, they do still feel quite good. They don't feel cheap. The power button clicks in and out, and the reset button is just a sort of momentary push switch, just like the original, and it doesn't really feel any different to the original, so it's not as if you're getting a cheaper console here. And the weight of this thing, while it is a little bit lighter, it's smaller, so it's going to be lighter, and it doesn't actually feel as cheap as you would imagine. So in terms of output, you have a headphone jack, of which is different from the original console. Now, I'm guessing it's not going to be stereo. I'm guessing it's going to be like, I don't know, sometimes they can mix like the two mono tracks of which the Nintendo can create, and they'll put it into sort of two tracks left and right so that it's stereo technically, but then it's not really because it is just two mono tracks. But we can have a wee look at that later. And it has the usual sort of composite video out and the audio that goes along with that in the form of two phonos. On the back you have your bit for your adapter, and you have a port for an RF lead, of which I'm not going to be trying that out, but back then sometimes you didn't have any other inputs other than an antenna lead on the back of a TV, so this was necessary. And it's also something that shows the age of the console. I'm guessing this console, I've not looked it up, I'm guessing this console's actually older than a lot of the clones out there. I'm guessing it was probably out closer to the time when people were still playing sort of old Nintendo games, maybe SNES games, and it was probably a lot more relevant when it came out. I can't really imagine getting a clone console these days. Like, imagine getting a clone of like a PS4, of which could actually do the job but maybe just had some cheaper elements to it. That'd be kind of weird, but you don't really get that anymore. So I don't know if this thing actually works. It was listed as sort of used, it wasn't listed as spares or repairs or untested or anything like that, but as you can see, the system is in a sorry state. It's really dirty. You can see sort of marks on the plastic, and you know, it's been through the wars, put it that way. It's been through a lot of Nintendo rage quitting, and what we're going to do today is we're going to try and clean up the little blighter. Right, we'll start it off nice and simple with cleaning up this console. I'm going to use a microfiber cloth with a little bit of sort of glass and window cleaner sprayed onto it. It's got vinegar in it, so it's kind of a little bit better for lifting sort of dirty marks and stains, but sometimes it won't do quite the job you want it to, and you have to move on to more abrasive methods, but we're going to try this first and see how much dirt comes off. Right, so the dirt is coming off, but it's, yeah, you can see it's really bloody grimy. Like, if you can see that much dirt on the cloth, then you know you've got a lot of work on your hands. Right, so some of those stains and marks still aren't coming off, so we're going to try something a little bit different. I've put a little bit of baking powder into a dish with some water, and this will be a little bit more abrasive and a little bit, you know, sort of active in terms of lifting the marks off. We're going to be gentle, we're not going to go in too hard on the plastic because we don't want to take away the original sort of texture, but hopefully this will sort of do a little bit better than the sort of standard cleaning products.
"2,000 years later."
So I've cleaned the little bugger from head to toe, and as you can see, it's now spotless and not the disgusting mess it was originally. Even all the scratches and marks from the top of it I've managed to sort of buff out, and I've not done anything to the original sheen of the plastic, so that's a job well done. Anyway, now I suppose all we have to do is plug it in and see if the damn thing works. Right, so we've got the cheeky little blighter all set up and ready to go. We've got the composite cables plugged into the TV. I've got an official Nintendo gamepad of which I'm going to use. I've got a big fat stack of games. And the last thing would be the power supply, of which was the only thing that actually came with the console. Everything else I'm supplying from my own collection. But the concerning thing about this power supply, I don't know if you can see because the camera might not focus, but if you can make that out, it's basically a Super Nintendo power supply they've given me, an actual Super Nintendo power supply, an official one, and not only that, it's a European plug. So that's evidence enough that this thing actually did come from Spain at some point. It wasn't actually sold here, I wouldn't have thought. But there is ways and means to get around this. First off, I had a quick scan around the internet to see what kind of power supplies people were using, because it's always important to check the polarity and the voltage of the power supply you're using with your console. Luckily, this console needs around about sort of 9 volts. I think it does say 10 volt on the bottom, but 9 volts I believe will do, because people are using their original Nintendo power supplies to run this console no problem, as far as I know. So let's hope that nothing goes boom. The polarity is also the same as the original sort of Nintendo and the SNES consoles. So we've got no problems there, because sometimes the Japanese consoles actually use the Mega Drive style adapters. They don't actually use the Nintendo ones from the UK. They're a different polarity. So yeah, it can be all very confusing, and that's why you should really look up things on the internet before you get carried away. Anyway, forward march! Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment of truth. Does this console actually bloody work? Now, I've stuck in Mega Man 2, and the reason for that is I've played it enough to know what it should look and sound like on the system. That's if it boots up at all, because this might swiftly turn into a repair video. Anyway, pop that back in. And as you can see, you just slot it into the front and firmly press it in, and none of this pressing it down and other such nonsense. That's it, the game is in, you're ready to press the power button and see if this little blighter actually works. Now, I'm not holding my breath, there might be something wrong with it, but if there is, then, you know, at least you're getting some repair videos out of this. If not, then we're just going to have a little look at the console and see how it compares to the actual NES. Anyway, moment of truth, let's press the power button. Oh, there we go. 1989 Capcom. It appears to be working just fine. Sound's coming through just fine. Turn it up slightly just in case you can't hear it. The picture looks fine so far. We'll see when it starts to move if there's any sort of weird nonsense going on with it. I'm really surprised the game started up straight away because you saw how dusty it was, and you would imagine that the dust would get into those pins and sort of, you know, cake on there and stop it from loading, but, you know, the system doesn't seem to care. It just loaded the game straight away. Didn't even need to sort of... Well, I suppose I reinserted it just to show you what the game was, but... yeah. Seems to be working just fine. I can't really tell so far if there's anything wrong with the graphics. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the original Nintendo anyway and sort of hot swap them out and check the graphics. That music doesn't sound quite right. The music sounds like it's in a different key. I'm imagining that. I don't think I am. Anyway, we'll pick up the controller and we'll have a little kind of shot. The controller seems to be working just fine. Go in normal difficulty. I feel like the music is in a different key, but I'll need to sort of turn on the original Nintendo and see if the music sounds totally different or not. So I've been messing around with it, and so far I can't see anything actually wrong with the graphics. I can't see anything glitching out or not looking quite right. Yeah, it's just that music doesn't sound quite right to me. It sounds like it's in a different key. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't sound bad. The music sounds fine. Oh, feck. Forgetting I can't jump over the chain bit of those spiky things. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound that bad. It just doesn't sound like the original music. So 2 seconds, I'm gonna go and fetch my original Nintendo and we're gonna like boot that up and see if it sounds any. Right, so I wasn't imagining things. The music that was playing on the clone system there is actually higher pitched. It doesn't sound terrible, but it doesn't sound like the original music, so it doesn't seem to be getting the sound quite right. Whether that's just to do with the fact that it's not the exact hardware, but it's sort of doing its best, I'm not too sure, but it's definitely not the same pitch as the original Nintendo Entertainment System's putting out. But I'm going to switch back over to the clone console anyway, and we're going to mess about with it, including I'm going to check out that headphone jack on the side, just in case that's giving us some sort of different sound. I doubt it, but we're going to try it anyway. Right, so I've plugged in a little external speaker over there to the headphone jack. I just want to see if it sounds any different for the headphone jack as opposed to using the phono next to the composite video output. I know that sounds a bit weird and it shouldn't be giving out a different sound from each of those ports because technically the sound's coming from the same place, but I just want to see anyway, and I also want to see if the actual sound coming into the system sounds like stereo. It might not actually be true stereo, but I want to see if it actually sounds decent. So, because I couldn't say that the sound sounded terrible out at all. It sounded fine, it just wasn't in the right key. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to fire up the console and I'll be quiet for a couple of minutes and we'll just listen to the opening music and see if it sounds right. There we go, game's loading up. Definitely higher pitched. Sounds pretty good coming out of that speaker though. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Right, so I don't know about you guys, but that actually sounds pretty good to me. It's not the right key at all for the game. It's not the right key of music, but it is the music, and it sounds good. Sounds good, especially coming out that little speaker. I don't know if it is actually stereo, I can't tell, but there is a lot more depth to it coming out that speaker than it is coming out of the TV, so I'm guessing there is something a little bit different going on, whether it is just dual channels left and right, but basically the same mono sound for both, I don't know. But it actually sounds decent, so I'm kind of happy with that. Like, I'm going to look into this further and see why it sounds different, but yeah, I mean, I can't really complain. I'm going to try out a couple of different games and we'll see how we get on here. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen this, but the top end of the screen there isn't actually changing. The board's moving, but the top end of the screen there is actually sticking on what was on the previous tile, or the previous board, or whatever you want to call it, which is really bloody weird and annoying, and that is definitely not a good thing. Like, this isn't graphically right, because that means that there's a possibility you won't see sort of danger up here. Like, even if I move... Well, there's nothing I can bump into in this game, but if it was a shooter where there was something you could bump into there, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily see it, and you could, you know, it's a bit of a cheap death. I don't know, man, that's a kind of... That's not a good thing. See what happens in this. Yep, it's happening again. As you can see, the bit of the sort of, you know, entrance to this level is stuck on screen, so... Yeah, that's not good. Oh, the intro screen there's a bit jittery. It's not usually like that at all. Yeah, that's not good. That bit seems to be fine. Oh, that noise didn't sound very good. See if anything doesn't look right. Ooh. Graphically in this game, everything doesn't look that bad. There's nothing sort of sticking on the screen like the previous game, but again, this isn't like moving. Let's move a bit faster. I'm just trying to get, I'm not trying to actually seriously play the game, I'm just trying to get sort of graphical glitches to sort of happen just in case. This is quite a fast moving sequence, so you would think if anything was going to happen, it would happen now. I don't know if actually... I mean, as far as I know, this is what this looks like. It doesn't, you know, look any different. It might actually... I'll go back and check anyway, but yeah. Right, so I've spent enough time with this console to sort of make up my mind on whether it's a suitable replacement for a Nintendo Entertainment System, and for the most part it is. If you can deal with the fact that the sound is slightly higher pitched than it would be on a normal Nintendo Entertainment System, then this would be perfectly fine. You wouldn't notice the difference. There is an annoying sort of characteristic of it though, where some games have graphical glitches, and I suppose that's going to happen on any clone system, and it's probably not very fair to sort of judge the console based on that. But at the same time, you know, when you're comparing it to an original Nintendo Entertainment System and you're trying to weigh up whether this thing's worth having, if you're just getting it because you think that, you know, it'll be better playing the games through this sort of slot here and you don't have to sort of wear your pins down on your original NES, you're not going to get the experience of an original bit of hardware. You're going to get something that does come across as, you know, a clone. So you're not going to get something that's, you know, basically a NES but better built. Don't get me wrong, the build quality of this thing is actually quite nice. I do quite like it. It's not bad at all. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels good. But in general, the way it's running games at the moment, until I look into it a little bit and maybe open it up and see if there's anything that can be modified inside to sort of play a little bit better. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't. It depends. I'll have to do a bit of research. But until then, I mean, I wouldn't get rid of your original Nintendo Entertainment System or stop using it in place of this thing, because it's just not going to tickle your fancy the same way as the original hardware. But I mean, it's still an interesting bit of kit anyway, and there is other versions of this, of which has like, they have like a slot on the top for playing like Famicom games, which, as you know, a Famicom cartridge is a lot smaller than a Nintendo Entertainment System cartridge, because they wanted the system to look more kind of professional, like a bit of sort of home entertainment kit, like a VCR or something like that. So they made these big daft cartridges to make them look a bit more like tapes. I don't know, man, the 80s was a weird time. But yeah, and some of them also have built-in games as well, so like if you're wanting lots of games fast and cheap, then yeah, I mean, if they're built into the system, then that would be great. Like you would buy that back in the day, you know what I mean? You'd be quite happy just to have all those games and not have to buy them. But this one doesn't have any of that. It's just, you know, literally just a different version of a Nintendo Entertainment System. And I mean, those graphical glitches are really annoying for certain games, and it just brings you back down to reality and reminds you that you're not playing on an original NES, which is a shame. But I mean, it is what it is. It is a clone console after all. It's not original hardware. I would say it's not trying to be, but really it looks like it's trying to dress up as a Nintendo Entertainment System for Halloween. It's cosplaying as an original Nintendo. But yeah, I mean, it's still a really interesting console, and if I get enough of a response with this video, I'll actually open it up and see what's different inside this console in comparison to an original NES. I can also make another video if you want to see something like more games getting played on it and more things getting tested. Maybe if you're interested in this console yourself, you might want to see a specific game getting played on it, and I do have a lot more NES games available to be tried out on it, so if there's something you specifically want to see, then you can ask for it and I'll possibly do it. But until then, I think I'm going to stick to using my original NES, despite the fact that the games are an absolute pain in the backside to load. Although I will say, when I was sort of doing comparisons back and forth with Mega Man 2 there, it seemed to play straight away. So maybe the old NES is getting a bit of flack that it doesn't deserve. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and I'm going to have another video up soon with a good friend of mine, and we're going to be playing some Commodore 64. I'm also going to be doing some streaming. I don't know if any of you guys are into that sort of thing, but I'm going to be streaming old games on Twitch at some point. Look out for the video. I'll probably put up a little bit of an announcement video or something like that, just saying what my channel is and how to kind of go and watch me and other such delights. But yeah, until then, get out my house.